First of all, the Silicon Valley African Film Festival, we're celebrating our 9th year. We're right here at the historic Hoover Theater in the city of San Jose. And the journey has been steady from the first year to now. We started 9 years ago with just a very few short films. We wanted to create an opportunity for a different kind of narrative about Africa, because this festival, I started it based on the idea that for far too long, our stories as Africans have been told by people that are so far removed from the continent. And these types of myopic and stereotypical stories and narratives continue to lead to blurred perceptions of Africans, blurred interpretations of Africans. And so we believe that if media has been used to create these types of images of our people, like we call the Tarzan image of Africa, the National Geographic image of Africa, and unfortunately, more recently, the non-profit or NGO images of Africa, we want to use that same medium to begin to flip the script, because we know that across the continent of Africa are incredible creative people, talented people that are telling their own stories, amazing filmmakers. And so we thought that if we were able to create a platform for them, bring them to Silicon Valley, bring their films to Silicon Valley, and share their own stories with people in the community, perhaps people can begin to pause to say, whoa, I never thought Africa looked like this, or I never thought that this issue could be handled in this type of way. And it's not about painting Africa as the beautiful whatever. No, it's all we're saying is, let the African tell African story. And that's why the subtext to our film festival, our theme is Africa through the African lens. It is the authenticity of the voice that is important to us. It doesn't matter whether it's the bad, good, ugly, but let it be from us. We are tired, we're sick and tired of being sick and tired. We're tired of other people telling our story as if we don't own our own voice. And so, as he said, until the lion learns to speak, the tale of the hunt will always glorify the hunter. So we're telling the world that the Africans are no longer just speaking, we are roaring. The African lions are now roaring, and these are the stories that we're sharing. This year we have 90 films from 32 African countries, showing the diversity of our people from the northern part of Africa to the southern part, to the eastern coast, to the central and the western coast. Creatives all over the continent are coming to Silicon Valley to share Africa with you. You can't be more authentic than that. So we are really, really proud of the stories that we are bringing here. We're excited and we're thankful to the community for the support, and most importantly, I think to the filmmakers for really sharing their authentic self with us.
Well, talk a little bit about the films that are being shown, and talk a little bit about their history, like where they came from. You just said 32 countries are represented.
Yes, yeah.
And just the depth of filmmakers in this space. Right. So talk a little bit about some of your standouts. Talk about the unique journeys of people getting here. Right. Just to participate.
Oh yeah, and it's amazing for us as a film festival director myself. The coveted spot in a film festival is the opening night. And this year we opened with a very fantastic film from Morocco. And the director and the producer of the film, as well as the star of the film, are here with us in Silicon Valley, all the way from Morocco, North Africa. And it's a beautiful film that you wouldn't, sometimes, depending on what lens you're looking at Africa, you probably would not expect a North African, Arabic-speaking country to present a film where the subject of the film is infidelity, not just on the part of the man, but on the part of the woman in a marriage. And it was incredibly well received, and we had amazing conversations about that. There's also a film from North Africa, this time from Algeria, called You Killed My Innocence. It's a 3-minute film. In 3 minutes, this young lady, and she's here, Louisa Kadri, challenges the whole idea of underage marriage in our home country. And so we can go on and on. There's a film as we speak that is currently rolling right now from Eritrea called The Forgotten. It's about the people that occupy this space outside of Eritrea and the borders where they have no homeland anymore. And they're all staying in camps. This young sister sneaks a camera into the camp and talks to her people. even gets arrested in the process. But we got a film here and we're sharing with the community. And we can go on from Nigeria, we have animation films here, we have documentary short pieces, long pieces, we have comedy, drama, thrillers. It's just an amazing montage. There's a film from Tanzania that is a horror film, and the filmmaker is here. There's a film from Sudan. There's a film from, of course, South Africa. You got Kenya. Nigeria, of course. The Nigerian producer is here with her film, The Lost Cafe. And you see, as a director, film festival director, it's hard to pick one film because it's like asking me which of my children is the most preferred. But these are, and remember, we had 1,340 something submissions to us. So for us to bring it down to 90 means that these are standout films. And it's the meticulous process that we go through every year, trying to make sure that we bring films to the community here, that we really push you, make you laugh, make you cry, but most importantly for us, make you think.
So when you're looking at films, are you trying to see something that seizes the moment of what Africa is to you, or Africa is in the united voice of Africans in terms of, right now, what does Africa mean to you in terms of its history and in terms of its current moment, and how do these films reflect that? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
because we have a very, very different, Americans sometimes have a very, like you were saying, we're outside and we don't know what we're seeing.
Right. Yeah, and the question about whether we are looking at films in a certain way in terms of a unifying concept of Africa, we are actually not. As a matter of fact, we are looking at differently because we want people to understand the diversity within Africa, because Africa is not a country. Africa is not a village. 1 billion people, 54 nation states, and then you talk about thousands of cultures, from religion to just social, cultural norms and vernacular and myths and symbolisms and all of that. So we don't even worry about that. We just say it's Africa through the African lens, which means whatever lens the filmmaker brings, as long as that is that person's own truth, that in itself qualifies the film. And then in the selection process, we now begin to look at other things like aesthetics or whatever. And sometimes we have a film that is not really a glossy film. It's a low budget film, but if we think that this film resonates or film has a heart to it, we put the film in the festival. A film is not about you must have a big budget to run it. We've had films from Malawi last year that the sister did the film for less than $3,000. But it was her first film, it wasn't glossy, but she had something to say. And so our review board felt that film, and trust me, when we finished screening that film, the conversation that went on and on and on with the audience was amazing, and we knew we had hit a chord. And so these are the ways that we do this thing, and there's no one formula to it. And we are not about projecting any specific type of notion of Africa, like I said. Good, bad, ugly, we don't care. If it is from the authentic place, if it is the filmmaker's own truth, we are all right with it.
So talk a little bit about the history of filmmaking in Africa, and then let us know what next year is going to look, because that's your 10th year, right?
Right, yes.
And that's a big deal.
Oh yes, we're going to celebrate in style, yeah.
So you already had 90 films this year for the 9th, so for your 10th year, what is your big plan? And also, talk a little bit about the history of filmmaking, and specifically, we know Nigeria is one of the massive film markets in the world. It's one of the top 5.
Right.
And so just talk a little bit about, because people don't really, I don't think mainstream people are aware of the power of African filmmaking. So talk a little bit about that, your 10th anniversary, and your history of filmmaking.
Well, in terms of, in terms of history of filmmaking in the African continent, I don't know how much time we have, because people think that when we talk about filmmaking that these are things that are fairly new to the African continent. It's interesting that a few years ago we played a film, an animation film in our festival that was made in Africa in 1948, an animation piece, and people couldn't believe it. And there was a feature film that we showed that was made in Nigeria in 1956 and all of that. So filmmaking has always been part, and remember, this is the place that is so rich with storytelling. And what else is filmmaking other than storytelling in moving images? So we have that. Now, in terms of the technology that I used to realize what we now call movies, yes, of course, those came from the West, and so a lot of that stuff began to really bubble during the time of colonialism in Africa. So one can look at the early 1900s, moving into the 1920s, 30s, as the time that filmmaking really began to happen, oftentimes with a lot of colonial tilt. Now, as you moved towards the 1940s, post-World War II, moving into the independence struggle, you started having some independent filmmakers on the African continent and the African diaspora. Some of them that left to go to school in Paris or in England began to make films. People like Sambene, the late Sambene, Osman Sambene, and some of these great brothers and sisters began to do films that were politically tilted, running social and political commentary about the oppression the people we are facing as colonized countries. And so a lot of the films that were coming out of the 50s and the late 40s in Africa, or by Africans that were outside of Africa, had seemed to have a lot of that social consciousness, politically about political consciousness. And then as Africa began to get independent, with Ghana coming in 57, and then you moved into 60 and 60s, a lot of the African countries began to find independence. Then the type of stories that you were seeing coming out began to reflect the newfound freedom, the pride of motherland, the birthplace, and all of that, and heritage, and all those kinds of things. And then we moved towards the 70s and the 80s, where things now began to become more like a mix of the heritage pride, but also there was a certain longing, because with the newfound freedom, people began to seek very westernized cultures. And so these films seem to begin to become what I used to call a bad facsimile of Western life. And you found that a lot in the 70s and the 80s. But an interesting thing began to happen as we started turning the corner in the 90s, where consciousness began to push, pull in again. And so since the 90s now, you're beginning to see, and that's not to say that filmmakers are not in all facets of filmmaking, but it's interesting to see that since the 90s or the 2000s, a lot of films now that you're seeing, outside of the recreational films and fun movies, but some filmmakers are really standing up and beginning to reclaim who they really are. And that's the power of what I'm seeing, just like you see happening in the hip-hop, or what happened with hip-hop as a social commentary, liberation, and all of that. Young filmmakers on the African continent are beginning to use film to, so to speak, fight the power, and it's a wonderful thing to see. Our film festival welcomes any and all of those, but that's not the only thing we show. You can come to our festival and just relax and laugh all night long, or you can go into a screening room and also be enriched with the political consciousness or social consciousness that the film is revealing. Next year is our 10th year. We're going to celebrate in a very big style. It's October 4th, 5th, and 6th of 2019, and we're already beginning to plan towards it. And what we intend to do, and the planning is still in very preliminary stages, but we know we want to really invite all our filmmakers that have been in our festival, whether they have a film next year in it or not, they are all welcome to come. We call them our alums, and we want to celebrate them and celebrate the community. We will actually want next year to be both about showcasing films, but also about sharing the African culture in dance, in fashion, in food, in all of that stuff. So it's going to be a very big one, and I'll tell everyone to stay tuned.
Thank you so much for your time. It's
all right,
meeting
thanks.
you.
Same here.
My name is Sam Gilbert Mike, and my film is Bellis.
And tell where you're from.
Originally from Eritrea, Africa, and currently living in SF.
So talk a little bit about filmmaking, and talk a little bit about why you wanted to tell a story of the little boys and what that meant to you in terms of your growing up.
So when I was little, I was born in Eritrea, like I said, and growing up, it wasn't the best, but we had fun, and we did our things, and we didn't have technology or anything, so the only thing we could do in summer is go to the wilderness and enjoy our time with our friends and that's what the film's about, just about kids enjoying their time and having fun.
So it seemed like when we were watching the film, it seemed like these little boys. Just hold on for 2 seconds. So it seemed like the film kind of made the little boys into little men. They seemed like they were going off to take care of the family. So talk about that and talk about how you felt when you went and did the different chores.
Yeah. Kids in back home where I'm from, like usually their childhood is not as like the same as the American like lifestyle here, so it's kind of hard. So kids have to grow up and take care of the family. So what the film is about is pretty much collecting a fruit called beles, and every summer it grows. It doesn't grow any other part of the year. It only grows in the summer. So with that, when you collect it, you're able to sell it or feed it for your family, and that's what pretty much kids do back home, is support their family by selling it or support their family by feeding them. So it's very valuable fruit in our culture, and it tastes good too.
So talk a little bit about what it's like to get it, because when they were going to get it, there was some stuff going on around that was not too comfortable, and even in the audience, you're like, oh. Yeah. But talk about that, and also talk about the taste, and talk about their friendship in terms of what friendship meant for you as a kid.
To get the fruit is very difficult. You pretty much have to go to this mountain, like very far away, like an hour or 2 hours from your home, from where you live. And I personally have fallen on a cactus before and have really injured myself doing that when I was little, and it hurts a lot. And it's not the best thing, but the end result is the best, because the fruit is like what brings like the taste, and like it's part of the culture. So like every summer, that's what we eat, and we go to the wilderness to collect a small part of what it is, you know.
So talk a little bit about what friendship means when you're a little person and also as an adult. I mean, in terms of how you view your friendships in Eritrea versus America. Like, is there a different connection, and how you really did a lot for your families as little kids?
Definitely. Through that, I mean, I have gained a lot of friends, and I've built a bond with my friends. I still have connection with them right now. I still call them like once a month and check up on them, you know. We always talk about like our childhood and how we always collected beles and sell them. And so it's a great memory. It's definitely different than American culture and American friendship, because here it's more like through internet, you know, like through text or a phone call. But there is more like you have to go see them and go out and enjoy your time. So yeah.
So talk about what got you into filmmaking, and what's your next project?
I got into filmmaking through basically making a soccer video, because I used to play soccer. So I started recording myself playing soccer, and I started sharing on Facebook with my Facebook friends, and they were like, oh, this is actually cool or dope. And then at that point, that's when I realized I was like, I could do this for a living, and I could make things that I want to see through creative purpose, you know, and show through a film instead of through words.
So talk about what you want to do next, and why your country is the first thing that you chose to film. I mean, because you have a lot, you're in San Francisco, you're not in some little dinky town. I mean, so you had a lot of choices. So why did you pick that, and do you think that's going to be your next choice?
I'm very humble, and I know where I came from, and the first film I want to do was for my culture, you know. I want to remember what I grew up, started doing, and it's important to remember your culture and never forget it, because obviously when you come to America, there's a lot of like surrounding and different culture clash, but it's always great to remember where you're from and what's your history, and that's what I did. And hopefully my next film is probably going to be about Eritrea too, so you guys stay tuned.
The film is called Life is Fair.
Okay.
And it's the story about an Eritrean cab driver in San Francisco, and how everything that you just said, personal, political, it's all tied into his story of being homesick and what it means to be homesick, and how you deal with it if you are not where you feel like you should be. And he is a star in the film. He kind of carries the whole thing.
So how was it shooting in San Francisco? San Francisco's already busy and crazy, so how was it just shooting?
it was tiresome, but because it's her, whatever she does, I will participate. I promised her, and even in her third movie, this was her second movie. Even in her third movie, if she invites me, I will be there.
You are invited.
I'll be there. I assure you.
So is there a strong Eritrean voice in the San Francisco Bay Area? And what is it in terms of political, personal, cultural?
So the film is about that question. There is not one voice, there's many voices, and this story is tried very hard to capture more than one perspective, to present them to the communities as an option. Even San Jose has multiple Eritrean communities. There's a diversity of opinions and experiences. So the film is about one person, but it's also about different generations this person knows, and it's about the domino effect of an opinion and how there's not just one.
So how is you as a young filmmaker how do you look at the Bay Area in terms of opportunity? How do you look at it in terms of women filmmakers? What is your perspective in terms of getting your movie out there? I mean, you came to this festival. You've been like being on festivals or?
Yeah. So Life is Fair premiered at the 2008 Brooklyn Film Festival in June. We went to Black Star Film Festival in Philadelphia, African Diaspora International Film Festival in DC. We went to Ghana for Black Star International. And we're going to Indie Memphis and New Orleans Film Festival in the next couple of weeks. So we've been around. And the other part of your question about being in the Bay Area and being a female filmmaker, I mean, we're in the Bay Area. The reality is the story that I'm trying to tell is about San Francisco. I'm born in San Jose. So I feel like opportunity is where it's developed, and I'm from here, so I want to stay here and do this work.
So how did you get into this work?
I mean,
Your filmmaking.
Filmmaking, I'm self-taught. I didn't go to film school, but I keep staring at him because I turn to my community. My movies, I cast my mom's friends, I cast my mom, my cousins, my brother, my sister in it, and the story is kind of about our culture. So I had to.
The language too.
Okay.
How do you introduce the language?
Again, deep. Okay, I'll keep it concise. My films try to explore that. What does Eritrean culture mean to me? How do I embody it? How do I practice it? How do I interrogate it? So it is language, it is experience, it's location, and it's also reality. The reality is that I am Eritrean American, but I live in California. How does that look in a movie? And how can I learn about Eritrea when I'm not in Eritrea?
And so what were your cultural references in the movie that somebody Eritrean would know, but somebody who's not Eritrean would be like, oh, I didn't even get that. You know what I'm saying? Like those moments that are culturally, like for instance, for African American women, we have certain things, like if a sister says something in the film, you'd be like, oh, yeah. And if somebody else heard it, they would not have a cultural context.
Yeah.
So is there moments that are very Eritrean that talk about like your mom's history, his history? Is your mother native from Eritrea or? Yeah. Okay. So their history versus just an American Eritrean in terms of the cultural connection. Do you know what I'm saying? Is there any reference points that would be unique?
Well, the whole point of the film is that we're trying to challenge and redefine what the Eritrean inside joke is, or there's more than one. The point of the movie is there's more than one way to be Eritrean. So I just included as many experiences as I can about the culture, and you can take what you choose from it, and that could be your connection. But there is not if you get this, you get this many Eritrean points. There is like there's a silo there's a lot of, I feel like, strictness when it comes to talking about Eritrea, and there's like a right way to talk about Eritrea and a wrong way to talk about Eritrea. And so I tried really hard with this film to offer many opportunities to talk about Eritrea without consequence, with just encouragement.
So when you're in spaces where there's African diaspora filmmakers, what have you learned from them? Because you said you've been to a lot of different film festivals. Have you learned from other filmmakers, like their approaches, and have they been really generous with you, since you seem like you're up and coming and you're excited about the future and you're definitely trying to tell cultural stories?
Yeah.
Have you learned anything unique about how they do it that you're going to take away and move forward with? Or?
So to be honest, I've learned a lot from other self-taught filmmakers, and the festivals have been great for networking. But the most that I've learned about the movie is, I'm going to just turn the mic to him, from the people in my community. Like, I learned much more about he helped me co-write the script. I wrote a script I did a bunch of research, read a bunch of books about the Eritrean characters in my stories, and I would just bounce ideas off of Baba Isaak and my mom and Getu. So I would like him to answer a question of how to learn, because he has an experience that I would dream of. You know, he grew up there, he taught there, he went to school there. So now I'm not talking anymore. Baba Isaak, tell us everything.
And you call him Baba, and that's a term of respect. And that's not just in that's in a lot of different cultures. So say what Baba means.
Can you say what Baba means, Baba Isaak?
Aboy Isa.
Aboy Isaak. I mean, it is a term of deference.
Yeah, it definitely is.
Yeah.
It's an accepted word. When somebody says Baba Isa, it means it's an accepted word.
So talk a little bit about your history. She was very excited about what you've contributed to the film and your story and your history. Talk a little bit about what your experience was there and your experience here and how they blend together.
In short, it's complex.
Yeah.
It's not as simple as easy. At some point, I was in the field fighting for freedom. At other point, I became a refugee and stateless. And from there, then I resettled in the States. But I never forget my home, my background, my culture. And also, I'm trying to be an internationalist, being a product of different languages, cultures. So we are students of this universe, and we learn from day in, day out, and learn more experiences as we go on. So if we are going to talk about Eritrea, it's a big topic. We'll leave it for another day. But in brief, it's complex. We fought for our independence. And Eritrea independence, we got it in 91. And then through referendum in 93, the Eritreans voiced for their independence. And it was recognized as one of the nations of the world. In brief, this is about Eritrea. I'm not going to talk about current systems and anything else. It's very ugly. I want to talk, it's a dictatorship where there is no rule of law, where there is no freedom of speech, the basic fundamental democratic principles. You cannot think about it being there. You cannot write, you cannot talk, you cannot organize among yourselves. And the decision is made by one man, a solo man, a dictator, and that's about it. And so these are the reflections, why this cab driver came. What are in his mind, what experience did he went through, life and death situations, coming here, how is he adjusting to the new culture, with the new norms? Is he doing it right? Is he not doing it right? What are the challenges? And then he has to survive. In order to survive, there are many ups and downs, including health issues, mental issues, and cultural issues. And therefore, I really admire her. She's a very great person, very hardworking person, trying to combine all the cultures. And from her own, she's a typical American. And if she's gonna say I'm Eritrean American by birth, she is. But she knows a lot about the Eritrean culture too. That's why I really appreciate her. So,
Thanks, Bobby. So
and for what she does, she's very great. And her dad is one of my best friends who was a freedom fighter with me in the field.
Yep.
So it's not very far. And
Can you talk a little bit about, since we're in a moment, you mentioned a couple of different things that we're in a moment of as a world. You had talked about being a refugee, and we're really in a moment where we're seeing a lot of African refugees dealing with a lot of different issues. And can you share a little bit about that experience? Can you share a little bit about how you want Americans to identify with the African culture and the refugee status of some people there? Because it seems like it's like so far away to a lot of people. They might see a news clip, but they really don't identify with the challenge. And can you talk about what led you to that, and then what led you through that, since you're on the other side of it?
I, as a former refugee and who came across through that, we came with respect and dignity when the American culture, the American politics was in its different complex situations, but at least we were respected as refugees and we were treated humanly when we came here. We were given the opportunity. Unlike now, what they are doing, they are catching them in the boards, separating them parents, This is unthinkable. I don't think this is America for me. This is not the America that I know. What is going on now compared with 34 years that I came, it's day and night. And I hope America will come back to its own situations, correct itself, and become those who claim they are Americans. They themselves are refugees. It's a matter of when they came. The original Americans, they are treated like nothing here. And therefore, we know what the history is. And therefore, but we have to learn from it. There are many good things, there are many great things in this country, and there are a lot of distortions and a lot of deprivations, including the human being, as America being one of the superpowers and leader of the world. If she is treating to those refugees like this, which direction are we going? It's very shameful and disgraceful thing. So from my perspective, the way the country is going now, it's in a very destructive way, and it's not going to help. If it continues like this, a lot of devastation is going to come. So we better watch ourselves, pay attention of what is going on, and try to go vote whichever direction what we want. And that's the only way to fight at this time. Otherwise, in a superpower, the leader of the world, you cannot fight it through bullets and something else. That's the only way of struggling it. And therefore, but we have to be all of us prepared to bring about the required change to its betterment and the betterment of its people, as well as refugees.
Yep.
They must be treated humanly because they are human beings, and all of us are the human race. It must be respected.
And so, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Bob Isaac.
Beautiful.
I have time for one more question. Sorry.
No, and I was going to ask you what's your next project in the future.
Excellent. Yeah, I have the next few scripts lined up. There are continuations of the kind of story that Life is Fair introduces. So, yeah, I'm still trying to figure out how to talk about it, but I will say that the next film is also about Eritrea, but it also is told in a similar way that talks about much more. So it's about Eritrea, but it can encompass much more than Eritrea.
Thank you so much, and thank you for your time. Thank you. It was
Thank
great
you.
meeting you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
So hi, it's a pleasure to talk about the film festival. My name is Zetwal Ima. I'm a professor of African literature and film at Tulane University in New Orleans. And I was telling some of the organizers earlier that I've been following this film festival for several years, just seeing the progress, seeing the community around it, seeing the films, the filmmakers who have debuted their films here. And this year I was really excited to make the move to actually attend and be part of it. So we've been here this weekend, and it's been a pleasure. I've seen several films, shorts, and narratives. Narrative features have been my focus. One of the most exciting things I can say about this film festival is that a lot of the filmmakers are present. You can have conversation. There's something very sort of, collective and informal. You can have particular kinds of, interesting conversation in between films, after films, which has been really lovely. And I also would say that one of the highlights of this particular film festival has been the women filmmakers who have been included in the dossier of the films. I've seen some fantastic films that I look forward to sharing with my students, to study, writing reviews, and also, of course, just building community with filmmakers from across the world, across the continent. It's been really lovely. It's been a pleasure. So I look forward to participating next year and for many years to come. I know this film festival is going to blow up. I was just telling that to someone. It's really lovely to be here at this stage, because I'm sure, in a couple of years it'll be so crowded that you can't even get in the door. It'll be like, oh God, I was here back in the day. What happened? So it's been really a wonderful experience. So thank you and congratulations.
I'm Maka Abe, filmmaker from Kenya, Nairobi. Film Clench Life of a Creative.
Okay, I'm Mark's friend from childhood, and when he told me he was coming for the film festival, I was so happy, and I came and just saw everything, and I like it here.
Yeah, you maybe tell them where you live.
I live in Hayward, California, from Kenya too.
She's my friend. So first time I came here, I was guessing, because I knew she lives in States, but I was just guessing, like, hey, where do you live? And she told me Hayward. It's like 40 minutes from San Jose. I'm like, come, we meet. And then she came today. She's been taking me around. First time in America. So I've had good time because of her.
Yeah.
So I'm happy.